You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing session of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Okelo, and I am here from Seattle, Washington. We are live streaming on YouTube, and we are also live streaming on Clubhouse. And I see a lot of amazing friends, Makuba, Adora, and Mary. Thank you for joining me on Clubhouse. I will invite you up on stage in a moment. But today we are taking a journey to Morocco. Our proverb today takes us to Morocco. And, the proverb says that drop by drop, the river rises. Drop by drop, the river rises. My hope is that you can learn a couple of things during our conversation today. Number one is get an idea of the difference you want to make and come with a plan. What idea do you have to make a difference in the world today, and what plan do you have? This is what this proverb is challenging us to think about. It's also challenging us to think about, how do you start small by taking one tiny step towards your goal, and then how do we celebrate each success that we have along the way, and also how do you share your journey? How do you document your story and share it with the family and your friends and your community, so that it can grow, so that you can get the support that you need. So, those are some of the themes of our conversation today. I just want to give a shout out to M. Jewel, who is joining us on YouTube. And M. Jewel is saying that this proverb reminds you of something. Just one moment. She's saying that this proverb reminds me of Africans across the globe removing the colonized manner in all ways from ourselves and changing for the better together. And then she says, a few other things here. But, for me, I'm just excited that it's Friday, and I'm excited, that, we are here together again for the Daily African Proverbs, because I feel that for me, this is the little drop that I can put in every day, and this proverb, it's really, it's encouraging us that, the work that we are doing, even our presence here in the world, there's a specific reason why we are here. We are not just here for a stroll in the city, or, for us to play small. I think we are here to do big things, each one of us, whether you are listening or watching this conversation today. I feel that we all have, a big mission that brought us here. So a lot of the time, it's really important to recognize that every step you're making is leading you towards, the destination that you've decided, and you've built a belief around, this is what I should be doing. This is what I should be spending my time doing every day. And for me, this session that we host here, the Daily African Proverbs, the African Father in America podcast, it's been, something that I've grown. At the beginning, I was even unsure about how would people respond to me showing up on Clubhouse and running a daily show around African Proverbs. There are many other African people out there who can actually do a fantastic job with a show like this. But I just felt that, this is something important that I need to gain courage and present and research and stay consistent with. And so this proverb speaks so much to me. And, I want to invite a few comments before I continue on. And I'll just be going deeper around these 4 themes that I shared. But I also want to create space for us to, listen to Adora and also Makuba, who is with us on stage. So Makuba, briefly, we'll start with Makuba, then come to you, Adora, in just a moment. I hope you're doing well. I'll just mute you for a second here. Yeah, Makuba, how are you? Where are you joining us from today? And how are you feeling? What does this proverb mean to you?
Hi, Simon. Good morning. Thank you for your commitment to the African Father in America. Drop by drop, the river never rises of wisdom. I think this proverb is very powerful in the sense that sometimes in life we think that what little steps we take, we may not be going anywhere. But at least we forget that in everything there is a process. And the more you try to improve on yourself and move towards your goals and dreams, you will eventually get there and learn different things about yourself. My father used to say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And it's very true. So when I look at this, I look at it as taking a step to your goals and dreams, and also obtaining and learning more about yourself and what you can overcome. My name is Makuba and I'm complete. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Makuba. I appreciate that. You know, yesterday when I hosted the Daily African Proverbs, one of the things I really enjoyed and I feel that was a great takeaway was a tip that, you know, everyone that spoke on stage could give in regards to you know, the proverb, the theme of the proverb, you know, drop by drop the river rises. And I'm curious, Makuba, do you have, if there was a young person listening somewhere, or if there was someone who was just yearning to learn from you in regards to maybe a story or, you know, a tip around this topic, this proverb, a lesson from this proverb that you can share with someone, what is it that you could share with them? Just maybe one thing.
Do not give up when you have your mind set on something. It may be hard, but it is necessary because you are worth it to achieve what you want to achieve, because abundance is ours. We are all called in this world to enjoy the abundant fruits of our labors. And sometimes it may be difficult, but in every lesson, there are two things that you need to learn. There is a lesson in failures, and there is an oath for you to become a new person in each and every struggle for as long as you live. And in that, you will have amazing wisdom. Wisdom is expensive. It is expensive because you go through certain things to gain wisdom, but then it is enormously priceless. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Wisdom is not free. You can't just get it for free. And that's like real wisdom. You have to experience it. You have to live it and and put in the work in order for you to grow. So I appreciate that. And you know, if you're just joining us, thank you for being here. Mary, Lavenda, Roger, Ejlal, feel free to join us on stage if you're on Clubhouse. And also, I want to attach the link to my YouTube channel so that you can subscribe. We just got to 2,000 subscribers, I think yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. So thank you all for you know, all the support on Instagram as well. I truly appreciate it. If you haven't checked out my Instagram profile, I also encourage you to, you know, just take a minute, check out this same proverb is there, and there's a community of people engaging with it over there as well. So just give me 1 second. Perfect. Okay, Adora, how are you doing? Where are you joining us from today? And also, when you look at this proverb from Morocco, drop by drop the river rises, you know, what does it remind you about? What's your interpretation about it? And also, you know, what tip would you give someone who is listening when it comes to, you know, the lessons or the idea of being patient, and understanding that, we are here for a bigger purpose.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Simon, Makuba, Stella, and everyone else in the room. Thanks for having me here. This proverb, there's a version of it everywhere in the world. I mean, the one I can immediately think of is little drops of water make a mighty ocean. That's something we learned growing up since we were very little. And it's so true. If you want to know the force of a drop of water, put a plug in the bath when the tap is leaking and go to bed and see how quickly your bathroom floods in the middle of the night, if you want to know the power of a drop of water. Or, I mean, it just shows you how quickly little things pile up. And they can pile up for good and they can pile up for bad. So when I think of this proverb, I think of, the little things that we do that we think nothing of, that eventually have a big impact on ourselves and others. It's the things we say to people in passing, and years later, someone might tell you that, oh, one day you said so and so to me, and it made me realize what I could do, and I did it, and now see what I've done. Or it could be, a teacher once said this to me and during a math lesson, and it totally put me off. And since then, I've never been good at math. So when I think of this proverb, I think of being intentional in micro things, in minute things, in little things that we do, because whether we are aware of it or not, they do have a big impact. And the impacts they would have will depend on the intentionality of our actions at the time that we did those little things. So, it's really gotten me thinking. And that's what I would like to say for now. And with that, I'll yield the mic to the next speaker. But I'm happy to be here today. And thanks for this room. It really gets me thinking about the beautiful continent of Africa and all the good things in it. And I'm done for now.
Thank you, Adora. I appreciate just hearing your voice, and the sounds of the birds just live behind you, and also your contribution today.
I'm at home.
Do you have a lot of birds near you?
I have some birds. Lots of birds in my tree. There's a big tree in my backyard, and they're always chatting and singing. These birds.
Nice. I just love it. Thank you so much. And also, if you're just joining us, welcome to the Daily African Proverbs. If you are on Clubhouse, I would love for you to join us on stage. Welcome Megan and Mag, Oga. You're all welcome. I think Lavender and Roger and the others have been here for a while. I'm just excited that you took the time to join us. I love being here myself. The hope is that we gain some wisdom, and we can't do that alone. Wisdom, there's an African proverb that says wisdom is like fire. People take it from each other. So one of my favorite things to do here in the Daily African Proverbs is hosting incredible leaders. And today we are really lucky that we've been joined by Sensors, Kabang, Loliong, and Sensors is here with me now. So, we are going to, have a conversation with Sensors for a while, and then we'll come back to everyone who is in the audience with us on Clubhouse. So, continue pinging people into the room, pinging about 5 people. If you're on Clubhouse, feel free to clip this conversation and share it on Twitter, and we are going to reshare it. And also, join us on YouTube if you want to see Sensors and I. The link is at the top of the room. Sensors, how are you doing?
Good morning. I am good. Yep, I wanted to be here early, but dropped my son off at school, so back home.
Yeah.
Great to be here, and good morning, everyone on Clubhouse.
Nice to see you. It's one thing to talk on Clubhouse, it's another thing to actually connect in person. So, well, not in person, on camera, you know. Yeah, this is the closest to in person it can get in this era. So you're someone we've worked a lot with, and I've always looked
Yes.
forward to this conversation, and I'm just so grateful that it finally happened. I want to get your perspective on this proverb, and then we are going to learn a little bit more about you. We are going to learn about some of the accomplishments that Census has had, you know, with public policy, you know, with being one of the instigators behind Africa Day Club. We are going to learn about last year's Africa Day and how this year's Africa Day is going to look like. So stay tuned. And Census, share with us your perspective on the Moroccan proverb that we are discussing, drop by drop, the river rises.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Drop by drop, the river rises. So I spent time thinking about it and then realized from an environmental perspective, you know, we look at the Nile and we monitor the river Nile rising, and most of the time when it's rising on our end in South Sudan, I am from South Sudan, and that used to be known as Sudan. It's usually because this water has come from another part and flown into the part of the Nile that's in South Sudan, right? And so it had a start. It had a start, and that start created a force. This is from more of the scientific perspective. When I also look at this from a proverb perspective, it really is that what you feed becomes strong. What you feed has power. If you are feeding growth, if you are feeding positivity, if you are feeding strength, if you are feeding truth, and if you are feeding righteousness, that becomes part of what your personality is, defines it, and pushes you to become someone who is both strong mentally and mindfully. But then also the opposite is true, which is that if you are feeding hate, fear, anger, sadness, you become consumed by all of that, you know, in such a way that you become a species that is full of rage and wants to devour, wants to destroy and destruct everything that comes along its path. So drop by drop, the water rises, the river rises, and it becomes a powerful force that can either feed the whole nation or create a destructive storm and destroy everything on its path. And that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I think it's like a very cautious message. You know, the river can be destructive, but also it can be beneficial. It depends with how it's managed by the people around it, you know. And I feel like you're already talking about public policy here. You're so passionate about this topic, but we won't go there yet. You know, we'll go to. I just want you to take us back to your childhood. This is a question I love asking. You know, all the guests that I host here in the African Father in America podcast. You know, for me, I feel that I began discovering myself when I was about 8. You know, and I always share this story that my mom gave me a bicycle and I was helping distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood, you know. And from that time, I've always felt like I could solve any problem, you know. So share with us, you know, a similar story of something that happened during your childhood that today as a leader, you know, whether in your career or at home or in the community, it just motivates you and it keeps reminding you that, you know, you can do this, you know. you can make this little drop today?
Yes. When I think of my childhood and think of growing up in Southern Sudan, Juba, the freedom that existed and the family, the large extended family that we had. And one part that continues to always stick out was how we always all went to my grandmother's house. We had our Christmas there, a lot of our Easters were there, our Sundays were there. You name it, for some reason, her home was that place of calm, safety, unity with all of our cousins. And it was really, really just warm and kind. You know, these memories have stuck in my mind because as life went on, a lot of that changed. Now, my grandmother, may her soul rest in peace, she was really, I think, above her time. She got married to my grandfather and they had their kids. And she started teaching because they grew up in what's known as Yei River State, Yei Town. Yei is in the Central Equatorial region. It borders Uganda and Congo. And my village from both my grandmother and grandfather's side of my mother's side are all there, next to Congo and Uganda. In fact, our tribe, our ethnicity, known as the Kakwa people, we exist within those three regions, right? And when she grew up there, that part used to be part of what was known as the Ladu enclave before it became part of the Belgique Congo. It had these different entities that owned it. But when it was part of the protected British region, they had teachers there and they had a lot of people doing work there. And so it used to be known as Small London. And as such, she was a teacher. She was actually a teacher. This was what, in the 40s? Yeah, 40s, 50s, before my mom was born. And when my mom was born, she named my mom Janet. My mom was their firstborn, Janet, after one of her teachers whom she admired. And through that, she went through different parts of the conflict, because we've had conflict in the Sudan pre-independence, really pre-independence, before 1956.
Yeah,
The
it's
Sudan
been
region
over
already
50
had.
years, right?
Yes,
Over
yes,
50 years from
yeah.
Anyanya 1. When was Anyanya 1?
Anyanya 1 started right after the independence, but before that independence, we already had issues because, as I told you, that equatorial region, which is now consisting of three regions, it was under different rule, not the same rule as the north or even the northern part of the south region itself. And so all of that belt was managed separately. And the people within that belt believed they were going to continue to run as an independent group. But when the independence happened, the British gave everything to the northern region in Sudan, in Khartoum, who were fighting with them. And the whole of Sudan became part of it. So she was there through that part of the war, and then she went to Uganda, came back, had these different refugee periods, came back, and finally people moved back again to Juba. And while there, things changed with her and my grandfather, but she stayed. She raised all my aunties and uncles, and some of them got married. And she decided to now go into the Lord and be someone who believed in God and became an evangelist. I never understood the power of her giving her life to God until I became older and I saw the impact it's had on us. When she did that, she lived in this house that they were like hats, right? It wasn't big, it wasn't shiny or grandiose, but it was filled with love. Um, she always found ways to put food on the table. Okay. She always found ways to put food on the table, and she was always very gracious and dignified in everything she did. And I always remember there were things that happened with some of my aunties, and some of their marriages didn't work well, my grandmother would go and get them from their homes and bring them. Okay, anything ended, you are being abused, she brought you back. Um, you fell pregnant and this man doesn't want to take care of you, she brought them back. Um, the children are abandoned, she would go and search for them and bring them back. She never stopped. She would travel for days to go and look for any of her grandchildren and bring them back. And as such, we were together. We all had each other, and we would all sit and eat on the same table as cousins. And she created and built us with that kind of love and relationship. And we've carried that out, even though we lost most of our aunties. My mom is now like the only woman left. What she taught us has kept us together and reminded us that believe and be empathetic and give from a place of love, and be okay to close things that don't work. Be okay to close doors and move on. Carry yourself. You will survive. God has your back. So that's a part that I always remember, and we have some photos that we look at, and it just warms my heart.
Thank you, Sensors. You're a great storyteller. I can listen to you for an entire day. Wow. Well, what is public policy? What is public policy? And just share with us some of the projects you've been involved with, and what makes you most proud when it comes to public policy, because I honestly haven't done enough research around it. I just want to learn from you, but I do know that you are very passionate about wildlife in Africa. I do know that you're very passionate about conservation in Africa. So I wanted you to speak about that, but specifically to South Sudan. Once you share with us about public policy, because I just want to learn, and I'm hoping that our audience members can also learn something.
Thank you, Simon. When I finished high school, went to college, I wanted to do something on IT, and the schools that I applied to sent their letters late. It didn't arrive in the mail. Some things got messed up on it. So I ended up, I went to one of our uncle's family friends who was the dean of the School of Environmental Management in South Africa, University of Venda. And he said, this is a really good field for you. I think you'll like it. It's a mixture of the science and the social aspect of things. And I did all of that. And as I went on with my studies and my work in environmental management, I also got into the part of environmental management that require you to interact with the social economic aspects, the human aspects of things. So it's not only the resources that you look at, but how do people interact with those resources? What are the things that they need for it to be successful? And that's how I got woven into that field, which meant that I am in the intersection. And when you're in the intersection, it means you can move from understanding the scientific element, but you have to connect it to the human element and connect that to development aspects, as well as human rights, people's dignity, and even how do they sustain their living while this part of the economic part of this project operates. So that's how I merged all of that together. And when I look at resources in let me just talk in the wider aspect of Africa, right? As you study things to do with wildlife, with conservation. First, you have to understand the history of how some of these things came into place. For you to start breaking it down into real nitty-gritty and even dissecting parts of it that had colonial undertones. Okay. And in the past, with a lot of our communities, we had a full relationship with the wildlife in our environments wherever we lived. We knew this would be the path that the elephants took to roam. We knew these migratory routes. We also had our own migratory routes, and we knew how to distance ourselves from them, and even hunt, choose when we're hunting certain animals at what phase, and for what reasons. All of that part traditionally was really pretty much instilled into us. But now when we move into colonialism coming forward, our countries being divided during this whole Berlin Conference, dissected into pieces, you realize that when that was done, groups were compartmentalized. It wasn't anymore people moving and migrating based on their systems, their operations, or whether they had conflict with that community, they needed to move out or come back, whichever phase. It wasn't anymore that. It was that there were now borders drawn where people were now forced to be kept within those boundaries. And people now had to deal with whatever resources existed in those boundaries, right? When you are now put into that place, if you are in an area that has high wildlife and you are there trying to survive, there comes a moment where there is so much competition between what you both are all trying to go after, and this then results in conflict. That's when you now start having conflict amongst each other. But then our colonial partners, our colonial masters, really had this belief that, you know, since they demarcated how Africa should exist, they therefore had dominion over the humans in Africa as well as the wild animals in Africa. And wild animals were seen as part of their pleasure, part of their enjoyment, whether it was for hunting purposes or whether it was for purposes that they would come and see these animals interact in the wild. You know, a bit similar to what they ended up doing to some of our own people from Africa who were taken, slaved, or put in museums, all of these aspects, or zoos, you know, that same mentality. So that was there. And to keep these animals existing for their pleasure, they had to now create boundaries and keep these animals within boundaries, okay? And this is where your parks with designated boundaries comes in, your parks that have fences comes in. But then also their obsession with wanting these animals to exist led them to develop plans that were more about preservation. You want to preserve something, you know, it must not die, it shouldn't decrease, nothing should happen to it. It really must just continue to exist and grow because you're trying to preserve it, preserve it, preserve it, as if you have dominion over it. And this is how a lot of what ended up in African wildlife started. That's where a lot of it started. Um, it also meant for their hunting pleasures that you had a lot of people going into this hunting safaris that, I mean, come on, the kings and queens would all come and hunt. And they would be so proud of the tasks they had gathered and how many animals they killed and how they were brave for doing all of this. But as it turns out, they also started realizing that the more you packed animals within 1 yard, the more there is a process that's known as the carrying capacity, which is that this block that you have the animals in doesn't have enough of the food the animals need for them to survive. Or it has a lot of that food that a lot of them, especially your stronger predators, start taking over, controlling, eating everything, and just expanding, expanding, expanding into large numbers. And they now start becoming a threat to that same environment that they are in. And as they did a lot of research through that process, finally an alarm rang in their head. Perhaps understanding our ways of doing things had some kind of influence. But then another part I want to add to was that during this preservation part, they also blocked local people from interacting with these animals. Local people were pushed away, blocked. Just they shouldn't even be anywhere next to this park's boundaries were created around it that kept them away. If they needed fuel wood, they couldn't go in there and get any of that fuel wood. If they hunted some of these animals, they couldn't even do that, which meant they also didn't have all the food they needed to eat. If the park was part of their medicinal herb land, that was also taken away from them. But with that part of the preservation, finally, with all the scientific work that was done and the conservation geological work that was done, they realized that, if we continue like this, we are actually trying to control the biological process, the natural process of how these animals exist and how they compete and how they even need different environments, right? A lion needs a large space, a cheetah needs a large space because of their speed and how much they have to move, and they need to hunt. It's not like you give them the meat and say, eat it. You make them become dormant.
But
So they
sensors.
started.
So then I have a quick question to just add to what you're saying is fascinating to me. I love it. What's wrong? When did especially in Africa, when did we stop living with the animals and the, like, currently in Kenya, for example, you find there is Masai Mara, there is Tsavo. We have these huge national game reserves, around when were they created so that wildlife were kept in one area, and it's causing some of the problems you're speaking about, and those problems are still happening now. Maybe there are some benefits, like maybe some of the animals we always see in the news, that some of them can now survive and might not be extinct, because of the conservation efforts. But is that really true? How can we prove that there are only two, I think, white rhinos that are left? Some of these things, especially because they're being delivered by the Western media, which are primarily owned by the former colonial partner. They are currently colonial partners, but they were colonial masters. So
Yeah.
what can you say about that? What can you say about that?
So, first of all, if I go back, right, after this part of the preservation, then they started moving into, we actually need to move to a model of conservation. Those are two different ones, right? And that part of the conservation came when what was known as the International Union of Conservation of Nature was set up. And when that union was set up, they now started looking at how do we have parks with corridors so that there is movement of animals, understanding migratory routes, that animals need to migrate from spaces to others because of climatic changes, or that with some of them it's seasonal. The same way the birds move on the air, so do the animals on the ground. And once they now started understanding more of that, they started being a bit more open with how animals were allowed to move. But these institutions were still owned by a lot of our European and American groups. And the way they would go on discoveries and how they had they had the conservation societies that they set up, who would go on all these long conservation programs into different parts of Africa. And I mean, you look at some of these things, right? You see that it also started from that era of when King Leopold came in, even when the British came in. Do you know that Eisenhower, okay, no, it's Eisenhower or Roosevelt, man. One of them actually came, I will check online, but they came on a whole safari trip all the way to the Nile regions. Okay. And they have some of this in the heart of Africa. Is it the heart of Africa? The one by Conrad. Yes. So they have a lot of these stories there, including photos of how this were done. And they took it upon themselves to study these animals, but they use local guides to do this work. Because as much as you see people saying that, oh, now I know how to actually track animals, it's our own people who used to do that. Because if you are migrating, moving to another place, and you're going in this long journey, and you start looking at certain dung, you're like, oh, okay, it is this animal here, it's this wild animal here, this is the footprint, this is where they have gone, we can't go there, we have to go that way. We started developing a lot of this type of systems ourselves. But they would take it and write about it in a way that they now owned it. And because it's written by them, when we write research papers or we write reports and we're looking for references, it's not accepted for you to say, oh, my great-grandfather was a local tracker, right? They're like, where is the reference? So you are pushed to open all these books that only have them as references to practices that were natural to you. And this is how a lot of the big parks came. If you see the Kruger National Park, the Kgalagadi ones, the ones in Botswana, and you move on to Tanzania, the Masai Mara, and the ones in Kenya, you move on to all of those regions. That's how a lot of them all came about. And what they do is they pour a lot of money into these projects to allow these things to exist. And so even if your communities that are around that region, you will be given some kind of incentives to get you to move away from there, because these projects are very important, regardless of the fact that you might not even have clean water to drink. But the animals and what they need is prioritized above you as an individual, as a human being. And if this was part of what you got your resources from, you find that this is also controlled, and you're even stopped from being able to live your own life, from being able to progress. You are controlled. Now, of course, they also pour in a lot of money to our governments, right? And so if they're pouring all this money into our governments, which of our governments are going to stand up to them and say, no, we refuse these policies? Because once you do those things, it means you are going to lose some of those funding that are being given to you. And even though a lot of this funding are driven through their own organizations, okay, if only a small portion of it might reach your government, but it's all driven through their own organizations that are run mainly by their own people, who employ most of their own people, and less of people like you and me. Unless if your country demands and said, listen, if you are working here, you have to have a portion of this group that is actually made out of people from this region. And these were things that South Africa is one of the countries that pushed, as well as Botswana, Zimbabwe, that pushed to make sure that they had their own local people within the wildlife industry. In such a way that if you go to Kruger National Park, you go to the Rustenburg Reserve, Nature Reserve, to all these places, you find a lot of them, even in Botswana, are actually Africans who are doing a lot of this work. If you find people from outside, a lot of that is limited, because they decided that we have to own this and we have to build this. And they also came up with this whole thing known as community-based nature resource management. Part of that community-based nature resource management meant that communities that, I don't know where that came from. Communities that need the resources in this park are allowed to enter the park. They are not charged any fees, okay? They have access permits that allow them to walk in, get the firewood, get any of the trees that are broken apart. They can take that. if they need to use it for firewood, if there are certain plants they need that are medicinal to them, they can go in there, get those plants, come out. If they have certain rituals or things that they need to do, they're allowed to go in there and do that without them being closed out. So South Africa pushed a lot of that. Now, Kenya has had a big challenge because it's really in a place where they own a lot of this land. Okay. And even Kenyans who own some of the land do not fully understand the importance of controlling it and the importance of allowing their own communities to exist and thrive. And so you see how the Maasai are pushed away. Yet they knew how to live with these animals, but because now everything is closed, they are forced to be with their cattle here, and the animals are there, and the large land swap of land that they had to shift and move around doesn't exist anymore. In fact, South Sudan has one of the last remaining open parks. Not even parks, it's just reserve. It's really just open land where the animals are migrating as they used to, even though there are all of this interaction between people, community, and those animals, but they're allowed to exist there and they're allowed to do that. Why? Because truth is, since we've always been at war, we haven't had time to make any of those strong policies. Plus, because we've always been at war, a lot of these Western countries are too scared to even come and say, oh, let us close this up, let us redemarcate this, let us block that, right? So in a way, it's helped, but it also means that you have a lot of poaching that happens. So when a lot of these nonprofits come in, they do a lot of work of surveying the land and the animals. And they also have funds for putting tracking on the animals. And so they spend a lot of time tracking all of these animals, tracking them. And that is how they are able to account for numbers. And they also have access to high satellite images that most of us can't buy. You know, for you to have a high resolution satellite image, you have to be spending millions of dollars to access that. With this nonprofits, this organization, their donors, who are their state companies, their state governments, give them access and subsidies to get all of this type of data. And so you might not know what is happening within what's happening in Kenya. You might not know that. You might not know what's happening in your nature reserves, but they know everything. In fact, they know more than you. They know which rivers are drying. They know what's going to happen in the next few years because they're tracking all of this. The problem here is that even though they're tracking, they're not sharing this information with you. Okay? And you will only know it if you demand full transparency and you demand access to the data. Then you'll start knowing that. Now, when it comes to connecting this to public policy, how does this matter? I mean, I can say, let us save all the wildlife, but if the community doesn't have anything, of what use is my wildlife, right? So I push usually to challenge people to understand the impact of environmental changes, natural changes, or even like climatic changes on communities, and why people have to think of it broadly. It's not about, let's move these people out of here. Where are you moving them to? If climate change is going to continue to exist, if flooding is going to continue to exist, yes?
There's rubber in the car. There's rubber.
Sorry, Papa.
No, it's fine. Yeah, how is that little warrior doing over there?
He is okay.
Nice.
He was watching something and then he decided he's done with it.
Nice.
He in fact switched off the TV, so that's a bit strange for him.
Yeah, no problem. Man, I'm just so grateful for all the knowledge and the wisdom that you're sharing with us. I feel like we need to have another episode, and maybe another episode after that one, you know. But I want us to quickly talk about Professor Tabanlo Leong. You know, when you think about his work, you know, how does that make you feel? You know, does it give you hope, or does it scare you because it's going to be a lot of work to step into those shoes, even you and everybody else in your family?
Oh, thank you for that question. Um, so of course, growing up, you don't really know much about what your father does until you reach a certain age. When you start to understand it, and even now, actually, accept it and be proud of it, and see the challenges that it's led to it. You know, and I think also as we've become older, he has started spending a lot of time telling us about his own journeys and how he ended up where he is and how much work it took to do that. And he always thanks his sisters for working in the farm so that he could go to school, so that he could be put into school, Simon Baker School in Uganda, and how he managed to just build himself from there and never gave up no matter what. He is one of the few people who is actually still existing who can tell you the route they took to come to America, because he got a scholarship. And part of that scholarship required going all the way from Uganda to the coast of West Africa, and then going there with one of those ships all the way to Southampton in the UK, and then to the US, where he came in and he was put with some family in Queens. He said he lost over 10 kilos in that journey, and that they had to stay in the stowaway at the bottom there and pretty much somehow like work to earn their travel or their meals. Oh,
Yeah, we lost you there for a moment,
I don't.
Census.
That
Um,
hold on.
it's okay,
My
it's okay.
son has decided to press some button, and it went to another one of my
No
channels, one of
problem,
my
no problem.
sites.
Yeah, carry
Yeah.
on.
So just listening to him about that journey and coming into America in the 1960s, right? During the whole civil rights era. It's first fascinating, but also a part of it has some sadness in it. Sadness that you come here and your identity is considered as something totally different, where you were living amongst people like you, and you now shift to all of that, and you try and exist and still keep your truth. And he's always told me that it's important to keep your truth and be righteous, because if you don't do that, you have nothing to stand on. You can't sell yourself left or right to whoever comes in. And so even when he was here, he went to Knoxville College, which is HBCU. He also went to Howard University, and he's one of the first Africans to really go into that. And then he was the first African in the Iowa Writers Workshop. So he has all these different firsts that he did. And he did all of this during that whole time of Martin Luther King and then Malcolm X. And I remember him telling us how they used to go and protest. And when they would go and protest, the government would come and actually tell them, you know what, you can get American citizenship. Just calm down and stop doing these things. He refused. And I was like, so you mean, Daddy, we would have been Americans or born Americans? But then you realize, oh, it might not have worked that way, because he had to go back to meet my mother. So that changes everything. But through his own journeys, I have watched him accept being in his own space, okay? In his own space with his own identity. as a writer, it means he delves into different worlds based on the stories he's writing about. And it also means he's able to dissect humanity, life, and the body totally different.
I have
Now,
a
he's
quick
also,
question. I know
yes.
I'm asking you questions on top of questions. Listen, I think he just wrote a book after Troy in 2020. And how old is he now? He's still unleashing books, and I really want to talk to you about getting him a copy of my book. I just want him to spit some saliva on it. How old is he? And tell us a little about After Troy. I know that this is not what we are supposed to talk about.
Oh, that is okay. That's okay. He tells us that he is around 87 or so. And whenever he tries to tell us when he was born, he says, my aunt said it was the first time when a plane arrived in Kajukeji. And so maybe let's go back to history and find out which date it exactly was. So we have to do that to really have an exact date of his age. But with that life that he has lived, he has had the opportunity to interact with so many different people. He is one of the group of the Africa Writers series that was run by Heinemann. He's one of the main people, and his books used to be within the high school curriculum and college curriculum in East Africa. And he interacted with people across the field, from presidents to you name it, various leadership. I remember once I came across a letter that he had when he was editor for Drum Magazine, and it was Kwame Nkrumah who wrote that he should give a book to Kenyatta, President Kenyatta. Okay, and it's written from one person to him, signed, and it's to be given to another person. And I was like, wow, this is a relic. you are doing all this communication with them. And he's humble about it. He's never bragged about anything in his life. Now, with After Troy, he has been writing it for a while. I mean, when you write and you give him something, you go through a lot of edits. And if you're not strong, you just leave that process. So he would write and edit it and edit it and edit. I think he's been writing it for over 20 years. That's how long he sat on it. He has written different parts of it, changed it, edited it, and he would go through every part of it, including the grammar. So when he came here in 2019, there was a lot of edits that needed to be done, and I became his secretary. I'm usually his unofficial secretary, an assistant editor, and all of the above. So he would take and scribble so many things, and I would have to say, right, send it back to the publisher. And we did this back and forth, back and forth. I promise sometimes I wouldn't even sleep because the time of publishing was near and all these changes were needed. And he would be like, no, this dot shouldn't be here. No, what is and can you imagine at his age, he would be looking for words, okay? And he would want a diversion of that word and look at 3 to 4 different dictionaries to find out, okay, what is a synonym of that word? What is an idiom that defines it? And I am thinking, at 87, you're still doing that. I am here thinking, no, I know enough words. I don't need to go through 4 different dictionaries to figure out certain words or to find different ones. So he's taught me the importance of spending time to perfect your craft. That's what I look at it as, and the consistency to doing that. And when you get his book After Troy and you read through it, After Troy is it's a connection to the past of Troy, the city of Troy, the war that happened, King Perseus and all the different kings and the queens, and how their husbands were at war. They had to survive and keep the fort, and yet wrangle with their own personal issues, of love, of commitment, of raising children. And then the man comes back and expects certain things, yet both have moved on in different parts of their life, and they're having a challenge of where do they even connect, or if they should even continue further. But then there is also this kingdom they're fighting for, this seat they're fighting for, where they want to be the rulers. And to do that, you have to give a certain persona, and have an army that you lead and instill certain things into them. So After Troy is that story. After Troy is written through different parts. One part would be um, the wife of Perseus, for instance, talking about her joy of that marriage, but then her languishing alone in her bed, trying to raise her son, having suitors coming after her, understanding she must still keep this fort here on the land while he is fighting. And then another part now moved to Perseus, or moved to any of the other leaders of that time, talking about the challenge they're having, the challenge to their manhood, their existence. What is there that they can even give to their children, if they are anything worthy? And how, they have lost favor with their wife, and it's all of these different conversations that go on. But another part of it connects us to our present. And the part of it that connects us to our present is that with some of our countries, we still have conflict. And conflict means there is a separation between where men are and women are, depending on whether they all go to fight in the front lines or not. And if there is family, one person has to stay to keep this family protected, because a loss to all of them means the end of a lineage. But also the relationship part, which is, how do we cultivate love? What is love? What is commitment? How do we honor each other? When do we even realize that we are too destructive to continue with love, with a union, with a relationship? How do we do that? So it brings all of those parts together. And some parts of it would just make you feel really sad, and other parts make you think there is hope. But it is the truth. This is our current truth.
Thank you, Sensors. Now, if somebody is listening and they would like to get a copy of After Troy, I was trying to share an overlay of it, but I could not get a good one. Just share with us where they can get a copy.
Just go to Amazon, and right after Troy, you will find that it's there. It's being distributed across the world by different groups. So if you search on Amazon After Troy, you will actually be able to find it, and put the link up for them so that they can go and buy it from there. And it's a really great story. I did some readings on it, but I think my readings are on either Twitter or in my IG, in my Instagram. So yeah, we did some reading for it. And of course, this book launch happened during the pandemic. So it meant doing all of this across different parts of Africa and different parts of the world online.
I would love to host him for this show, and just talk to him about it. Your dad, Professor Tabano Leong. So, I want you to use all
we
your...
need good internet connection.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing I would love for you to help me with. But the other thing is that we need to ship him a copy of my book.
Yes,
Those are my current
definitely.
dreams,
But if I can just add something, one thing he said to new authors and people who are writing, he has basically, so when he wrote After Troy and we had the book launch, some people asked him, but why are you writing about After Troy? Because this is Greek mythology, Greek literature. It's not African literature. And he basically said, first, who said we can't take from others and improve it? But then he also said, who said it is actually Greek mythology, Greek literature? who decided that these people owned any of this, you know? And he said, if you want to write, just go on and write, put your ideas down, use your own voice to write whatever stories you want to. It doesn't have to meet a certain specific system of writing, whether British or American or any of the above, because you also have your own traditional system of how you understand the stories you say. So bring those stories to light.
Excellent. Let's talk about Africa Day last year briefly, and some of the topics that we are discussing so far for this year. Your hopes for Africa Day 2022.
Africa Day last year was a 24-hour marathon that started from Asia and where the sun rises and ended up in the Americas where the sun set. And a big part of it was really just having diverse voices from every part of Africa join, and speakers who are leaders in their craft and in their field, talk about their own work, talk about the challenges they've had, but also their successes. So a lot of it had to do with that. A lot of the background work was really done by a huge team that didn't sleep a lot of nights, because preparing, organizing, dealing with different time zones, making sure you have these meetings at the different time zones so you're able to interact with your different team members was a lot. And I mean, I know you didn't sleep. I remember when one of the last sessions were happening, and this was happening during the America time at night here. I was gone. I remember just sent you a message, and I just said, I can't, I am just falling asleep. I'm trying to stay awake. And so now I've learned my lesson, which is take rest in some of the sessions that you're not the ones leading. And I think that's an advice I'm going to give to you too. Ones that do not require your real oversight. During that time, shut your eyes and just make sure you have other people who are handling what needs to be done, or even make sure you have an assistant where the production of it is being done. So that would be my advice to you. And we had the African Union, the then chair of the African Union, Dr. and I always keep mixing her name.
Chombori Kwao, right? Ambassador
Yes.
Chombori Kwao, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Who talked about that Africa is at a crossroads, and part of this crossroads requires us standing up and redefining who we are and taking it up on our own self to really do that change. That, everyone outside has their own interests. We have to work together for our interests. So that was a really big, important part. Now, coming to Africa Day 2022, we are going to connect it to the AU theme, which is food nutrition, food security. And that is going to be part of the basis of our discussion. We are going to do the same thing, which is a 24-hour marathon, starting from the Asias, coming all the way back. And just find ways of connecting stories of strength and resilience, and then stories of food and how our food across the Africa region has the ability to map out our own migration patterns of how we migrated, where we started in the past. Our genealogies, we're able to literally map a lot of that through a lot of our food and certain things that we do that are common across. So yes, that's going to be part of it, and looking into agriculture, but also understanding within the cryptocurrency world and Web 3.0, does it have any benefit for moving African agriculture forward? Who are the people who are winning in this? What are their successes? What are the failures or challenges? And we also want to have a session on what's going on with the team that did a lot of work to get people out of Ukraine. What does this mean for groups in the diaspora? Because it's a lesson in mobilization. So we're going to look at that. But we have a section that we are really looking at, and we want to understand how best to do that, which is we have conflict happening in Africa. We have what's happening in Ethiopia. We have conflict in South Sudan. We have the challenges in Mali and other West African countries that have had the different coup. And with all of these issues that are going on, how do we really bring it to the podium without breaking people, because you have different conflicting views that might come out. And we want people to assist us. I want anyone who's interested to please join our team. You can join and be part of the group that is preparing the teams, working on a specific time zone region, or contributing by assisting us with getting sponsors, helping give us media exposure wherever you are, and bring speakers that you believe are voices we need to hear.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Join us Saturday 9 a.m. as well for the Africa Day weekly sessions. This week, Avishta is hosting a show, a program there, but we will have the sign up link, where you can sign up as a speaker, as a volunteer. And Sensors, I just wanted to thank you, for all the support you've given me with Africa Day, with a lot of One Vibe Africa stuff, thank you so much, and thank you for all the incredible work that you do. I'm just so grateful. Just quickly, I want to come back to our audience. How much time do you have, Sensors? I just want to check. How much more time do you have?
I have 20 more minutes.
Okay, that's good. We will finish maybe in 10 or so. So,
okay.
Yeah, I'll come to you, Stella. Just share with us, what did you hear that Sensors share with us that you want to comment on? And what is your perspective on the proverb, and where are you joining us from? Let's just hear from you briefly, then go to Brother and Pavi and Jay, and then wrap up. But Adora, if you have a comment too, feel free to tap your mic, and I'll let you share your perspectives. And after that, we will wrap up our conversation. Okay, so I think Stella, if you're available.
Sorry, I was in.
No problem. Adua, go ahead.
Sorry, I was in. I was kind of in the YouTube, so I was figuring my way back onto Clubhouse. Yeah, absolutely fascinating conversation with Sensors about the animals and all that. It gives you a whole perspective of what the original Africa and what it is now. But I feel that as artificial or as, let's say, accidental as those borders are, it doesn't stop us from being one people and having one vibe. You know what I mean? So yeah, I look forward to Africa Day as well. It's going to be a marvelous day. There's so much content that's going to come out of it, and that's all I have to say for now. Thank you, Census, and thank you, Simon, for this conversation and this room. I'll yield the mic to the next speaker now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Adu. I think we lost Stella. We'll go to Brother. Brother, how are you? Where are you joining us from? And, share any comments on the conversation with Sensors, as well as your thoughts on the proverb. Thank you so much.
Peace and love, family. This is Brother Herb. I'm calling from the North Carolina territory. And it was a very beautiful conversation hearing you and the sister go back and forth. And, what really touched me when she spoke about that people have more compassion for the animals than they do our people. And to a degree, it's not to that degree, but still to the degree, a lot of places in the world, our people get treated less than animals, where our humanity is not respected, and it's so important that we still stand up for and let the world know that we are human and we will not accept being treated as anything less. And as far as the proverb is concerned, when I look at it, it makes me think of two things. The first thing being um, patience is a virtue, and the second one being trust the process. And a lot of times when you're doing, whether you're working out or certain things, you go do it. You work out for an hour in a day and not see results. But if you continue to do it constantly, then you'll be able to see the benefits of all your hard work because you trust the process. And that's what I say to that. I ain't gonna keep rambling on. Peace and love, family. Brother Earth.
Thank you so much, Brother Earth, for your contribution. I appreciate it. Hey, Pavi, share with us your perspectives as well on the proverb and any comments on the conversation with censors, and share with us where you are as well as you're joining us. Thank you so much.
So hi everyone, I'm actually joining you from India, and I have been in love with Africa ever since very young age. But we did this competition for affordable housing in Ghana, West Africa, and that is when we studied, because the area on which we were master planning was the water city.
Hi, Pavi. It's a little difficult to hear you.
And we were looking. So can I come back?
Yes. Try to get out of Clubhouse and then come back, and then we'll try again.
When I reach, I will.
Excellent. Jay, how are you doing? And Pavi, we'll come back to you in just a moment. Jay, share with us how you're doing, where you're joining us from, what this proverb means to you, and any comments on the conversation it sends us.
Thank you so much, dear brother. I'm coming from Seattle, where you are located, and I have so much respect for Census. And I love the fact that you spent this much time with her and that she shared so much information about her background, about her upbringing, about herself personally, about the continent. So it allowed me to learn a lot more about her, and that increased my respect for her. But there's a lot that I could say, but I know you're super short on time. So this is what I do want to say about what you asked her, and you wanted her to find a way to get your book to her father, and that you said that I'd never heard this before, Simon, you wanted him to spit on it, or I thought, I
Yeah.
know what you meant. I know you meant that you wanted him to give his seal of approval, or to somehow, put his magic touch on it or something like that. So that was really interesting. I love that.
Yeah, it's our tribal thing. Like when you are a child and you make your first money, you have to ensure you get it to your parent or an elder to spend it before you. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, that was very interesting. So drop by drop, the river rises. And I have to tell you, the first thing that came to mind was Maya Angelou's poem, And Still I Rise. And what's going on with Jackson Brown, with the Senate confirmation, and all of the things that were happening. So it was drop by drop of criticism, of unfounded, unnecessary, cruel, hurtful criticism concerning her background, her rulings, her decisions, and drop by drop of she was rising to that challenge. And this is something that has happened many times, in particularly, I won't even say with people of color, because I have traveled to other places and I have seen, even if you're not a person of color, the suffering that you have had to endure and experience, and still you rise above it. So that drop by drop, the river rises, is what came to mind. The difficulties that many people have had to overcome to rise to be where they are today and to be trailblazers. And this is Jane. I'm finished speaking.
That's wonderful, Jay. I appreciate that, and I agree with it completely. Hey, Pavi, share with us your perspectives briefly before we come back to sensors to wrap up the session for us today.
Hi everyone. Am I audible now?
Yes, much better. Thank you so much.
Hi. So I will quickly state what I said earlier. I said that I have been in love with Africa since childhood, but we did this international competition in Ghana, which was in a water scarcity area, and it was a master plan. So we were looking at ways of conserving water in that area, and that is when I came across this proverb. And with me, it means that you can really help environment with small efforts, and it does not have to be a grand plan, but one on top of the other. If everyone puts in their bit, then I think the proverb in very literal sense, it will work for construction projects. That is all I had to say. Thank you.
That's true. That's true. That's true. I love that. I love that. Thank you for being here with us, Pavi. And thank you, Adora, brother, and Jay as well for being with us on the stage. And David, thank you for joining us. Falin, nice to see you. And Roger, Ajay, and Lavender, thank you for being with us. Now, I just want to say thanks again to MJ, M. Jewel for being with us as well on YouTube, and K. Benjamin also for being with us on YouTube. Now, Sensors, just in closing, how can everyone who is listening stay in touch with you? And also, what is it that you heard from our speakers that moved you, that you just want to make a comment on?
Hey, Simon. Thank you all who commented and gave their input. M. Jewel, thank you. I am happy that you also resonated with the story of my grandmother. And Kay Benjamin, yes, it's great to share our knowledge. We find that there is something inside us that connects us in ways we don't know when through sharing our stories. Adora, thank you very much. You are right. Borders don't stop us from being together. In fact, where my mother comes from, as I told you, our nation is scattered between Uganda and Congo. We have an open border because we go across for funerals, we come back, we go to the market on the other side, come back. People get on their bicycle, come to sell us pure honey in our market, and then they buy products from our market because our currencies do not fully, we don't really have any of that exchange part. And so what they do is you buy a product, you go there, you sell it, and that's how you do it. So we've been connecting, and we have relationship regardless of those borders. In fact, most of the time we don't even see it
Hey, Sensors.
unless if someone stands there. Yeah.
I just think we need to have you as a guest in the weekly travel room with Adua, where you can talk to us about travel in South Sudan. I traveled across South Sudan. It's fascinating, just traveling. I traveled from Agok to Yei one time, but you can't go straight. You have to stop in Rumbek and many other places. And South Sudan is beautiful, so consider that. Adua, just take note of this one, and we could have our first special guest over there. But carry on. Okay, make sure you mention your social media links as well.
Yes, I will. And brother, you talked about trusting the process and how patience is a virtue. That is really true. I mean, if you were waiting to accumulate some water and you put a bucket, you would have to sit there and watch and calmly accept that this bucket is not going to fill up right now because it's coming drop by drop. And within that period, there is the frustration of why can't it work faster? Because you think you can control that nature, yet it's not within you. And Jay, yeah, I am glad that part of my story resonates with you and gives you an opening to my life. I always share a lot of this because I think when we know each other's story, we see each other in a different light. And as my grandmother considered empathy as one of her strongest belief systems, so I carry that with me too. I've learned the importance of it with age. And still I rise. Yes, still I rise. And all of these authors were really around my father's period when he was here at Howard University. Some of them are alumni, so it's really nice to see that. I have watched the various sessions. I missed some of them, but each day I have watched the proceedings of Justice Ketanji Jackson Brown. And I watched her demeanor through the whole process and how she started with first listening and trying to understand the mindset of the people who were talking to her and what type of criticisms they were coming with. And as the days went by, we saw her change and manifest and start bringing out her true identity on how she knows how to put people in their places and how she knows how to redirect them and even know when to not say anything because there is nothing to prove. But still she rises, and through that we as women, especially Black women, we understand what she's going through, but we're also scared because some of us look at it and think, oh, you really need some strong ancestors lifting you up to do that. So we look forward to the work she will do because she has a heart for it. And as my father said, be righteous whether you're sleeping. Don't just be righteous during the day, but also at night, because things can happen in your dreams. And if you don't have authority and power over it, you lose focus and you fall apart, you know. And Pravi, from the scientific, from the engineering construction side, you are so correct. I am glad that you got to interact with this proverb while doing the project in Ghana on water scarcity, which is that building different efforts and different hands, putting one block at a time makes a difference. And as they continue with the project, you just start seeing its impact once it's complete. But at the beginning, you are thinking, how do we start a dam by only one stone? Until you build more stones, then you start seeing its impact and the power that it does. To all those who want to connect with me, I am on Instagram under Census Kabang. I am also on TikTok under the same name, Census Kabang. You can also find me in Twitter under Census Kabang. And LinkedIn, it's Census Kabang Loliong. I use my platforms a bit differently, I think. A lot of my TikTok has been giving people messages and growth mindset and uplifting and learning and relearning, because coming to America, starting over as well, meant I have had to learn and start building different systems to be there. And within a lot of my Instagram, I share some of that as well as some other personal stories. But Twitter, I use a lot of Twitter really for policy, for pushing information, for challenging views, for calls to action. And I do something similar like that with my LinkedIn, as well as using LinkedIn for a lot of professional purposes. So follow me in any of them that resonates with you. I am happy to interact and meet and chat whenever the time is available. Simon, thank you very much for this. Yes, this is Bogo. Do you want to say hi?
Hello, how are you doing?
Papa, say hello. He says he's busy with something on the phone.
No
But
problem,
he
no
is the
problem.
voice you keep hearing a lot because his brother is at school, so he is the voice. He's 2-year-old, but he has so many words to tell you. He has conversations. That's the level we're at.
Yeah,
And he
nice.
uses his hands a lot like me. I am like, okay, I thought we developed this, but you already just came out from your stomach and you're like, but this, but that, and using hand gestures.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for, little ones like him. In fact, they are way more wiser than us. I was reading something yesterday that 6-year-olds laugh about 300 times per day, and adults laugh about 15 to 100 times per day. So, and then that comment said again, we should be 6-year-olds again. And I have little ones around me all the time, and there's so much we can learn from them. He's focusing on something there, and he's absorbing everything we are saying. Soon he'll ask you a lot about the things he's hearing, so don't worry. But hey, Sensors, thank you again. Today has been an incredible time, and this has been a long time coming. We've worked hard to make this happen.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
In Disneyland the first time, I
Yeah.
thought I could survive and be awake, and I just couldn't with this too. Papa, you remember Disneyland? And all the watching on you,
Nice.
and you went on the train, and he was more excited. He would get on anything that was his age group and then take a power nap. Would power nap, wake up and be like, all right, where are we going next?
Nice, man. And I just want to thank you again, Sensors. I know we'll be connecting. We almost talk every day or every other day because we work on a lot of things together, specifically Africa Day. So thank you. Make sure you follow Sensors across the platforms that she spoke about. Sensors, let's talk about TikTok. In May, I'm actually planning to do a lot more on TikTok with the daily African proverbs, So let's talk about that. Man, but Lavender.
I mean, you have a following, but also you have content that's making a difference. A lot of the things to do with daily Africa proverb, it's also connecting people back to their truth, to their identity. So I see such a big part for you on that. And I just wanted to say, yes, your book, we can get it through Kenya to Juba. You just let me know if there was someone going to the airport so they could do that. And he would also be pouring some libation. He believes in that. And before he opens the book, we must pour something to the ancestors to bless you.
Well, Lavender is here in the room. Lavender, in the next day or so, you might get a few copies. So once you get all of them, we need to send one to Juba, Yeah, we have to get those libations on this book, because who knew that, someone from Manyata CJ would have a book one day, and also just, the people that contributed to that book, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it is not small. It took almost, 6 years, at least 6 years to get it developed. And, I'm just so grateful. I want to know what you think about it. Read it and then let me know what you think about it. I'm just excited.
I am reading it, and we are going to do something with you on it. I would be interviewing you the next time. And let you do the talk.
Yeah, that one will be a year from now, something like that. I'm joking. I want us to do it soon, So as soon as you're ready, just let me know. But thank you, Sensors, and thank you, everyone. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you again for joining. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, make sure you subscribe. But here are the 4 themes of our conversation today. Today we were centering our conversation on a Moroccan proverb that says, drop by drop the river rises. Number one, my hope was that by the end of our conversation, you'd get an idea of the difference you want to make and come up with a plan. Number two, start small by taking one step towards your goal. Number three, celebrate each success along the way. And number four, share your journey with family and friends. And that is what we are doing today with Sensors. And, we learned so much about her. We learned, her perspectives on this proverb. We learned about her childhood stories and what drives her as a leader. We learned about the work she's doing around public policy. We talked about Africa Day. We talked about Professor Tabang Loliong. And then we also, just reflected on everything that each person in this room shared with us today. So thank you, Sensors. I will see you very, very soon. And thank you, everyone. Take good care of yourselves. Peace and love.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okelo, live from Seattle, Washington.